What's going on, guys? Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm super stoked about today's video. It's gonna be a quick one, but I promise it's gonna be a really fun one. I'm excited about the content that I'm about to share with you to help you get some better photos. But first, we gotta run that intro. Alright guys, like I said, we've got a fun one today. I'm going to be showing you 3 easy tricks you can do to make your portrait photos a little bit more interesting and a lot more eye-catching. These 3 tips are super easy to do. Anyone could do them, and you could even do them with your phone. So let's just quit wasting time, hop back to the computer, and I'll show you the 3 tips to make your portrait photos better. Alright guys, so we're at the computer. I'm going to hop in Lightroom and pull up some examples of each of the tips that I have for you. The first tip to making a portrait more interesting is to use the foreground. It can mean using the foreground that already exists and is already at the location and just including it in the photo, or you can go out of your way to add something to the foreground in order to make it more interesting. Let's look at a couple photos. So if we look at this first photo here, a picture I took of Jordan when we were at the sand dunes in North Carolina, you can see that I added interest to this photo by bringing her hands closer to the lens. So I had her reach towards the lens to add that depth, to give it that depth that you can see here. This photo ended up turning out really cool, and I've done this a lot with portraits, especially with Jordan, where I'll use something a little bit closer to the lens to really create that depth between her and what she's holding, and creates a really unique look that, like I said, I've used a lot in pictures, and you'll see that in a lot of the pictures I've taken. In the next photo, I did a similar technique by using the model's hands close up to the lens again, but this time, instead of using it as a focal point, I used it to frame the subject within the shot. So as you can see, his hands are very close to the lens. They're blurry, they're not in focus, because that's not what I wanted to focus on in this picture. I wanted the focus to remain on his face. I just used his hands in a creative way to kind of frame him within the frame, if that makes sense. I think this shot ended up turning out really cool. It added a really unique perspective to this specific shot and this specific set. But even without the other photos in this set, it's super eye-catching and just naturally makes you want to look at this photo. In this third example, it's a little bit underexposed, but this is a good example of when there was already something there that I used to put in the foreground. So you can see there was a chain link fence here that we decided to try to get creative with and put it closer to the lens of the camera. That way, it created this fenced in look without taking the focus away from the model. But it's just another example of how you can put something a little bit closer to the lens in order to give it a more dramatic feel and a little bit more of a more interesting vibe to your photo. The second tip that I use on a lot of my photos is using really low angles. I think it creates a super unique look and it looks cool almost every time. Let's check out some of the photos that I've done like this, and I'll kind of show you what I mean. So in this photo here, this is another photo of Jordan. We're in a parking ramp, and I wanted to use this yellow line as leading lines, but as I got down there, I noticed that she had really unique shoes that really popped from her outfit, so I wanted to focus on those. By dropping down low like this and shooting kind of up at her from the ground, it ended up creating a really cool look for this photo. You have her shoe in focus right up close to the camera. I'm actually combining my first tip in with this photo as well. As you see, her foot is a lot closer to the lens of the camera, giving it that foreground, that interesting foreground for this photo as well. But I also dropped it really low, and that was intentional because I wanted to be able to get the shoe and the parking line in the shot, but also still get the rest of Jordan in the shot. So I had her flip her hair, and I used the higher shutter speed to kind of freeze all that, but dropping it down low gave it this really cool, really unique perspective that you won't get unless you drop your camera really low. This shot is shot in a public staircase. I had my model standing up higher on the stairs and looking down at me. I do want to point out that when you shoot up at a model, it's going to make them appear more powerful. This can be good, but this can also be bad depending on the type of photo shoot you're doing. So just keep that in mind as you shoot low. It's not always the best option, and it doesn't always work for every client and every photo set you do, but it can be a cool idea if the moment's right. So in this last photo, I'm hiking up in the Shenandoah Mountains in Virginia, and I dropped it low to try to get some of these rocks, but also to give it a unique perspective of just what it was like hiking. So you can see I used some of tip 1 again, using that foreground. Like I said, I like to do that in a lot of my photos, so you'll see that in almost all of them. but by dropping it low, it almost makes you feel as if you're in the hike with me, as if you were there. I could have easily just had Jordan take this photo standing up or put it on a tripod and taken it, but I wanted to drop it low to give it that feel, to make it feel as if you were there with me hiking. So lastly, let's move on to tip number 3. This tip is going to be using reflections. Now, reflections can be found pretty much anywhere you go, and there's really 2 types of reflections. There's the natural reflections that already exist. Think about glass, mirrors, puddles of water give off a pretty good reflections. Things that are just naturally around you, look for those. The second type of reflection is something that you personally modify in order to make a reflection. So this would be like getting a glass prism or a glass ball, or even using like a CD or your phone and putting it next to the lens to kind of create a reflection on the other side of your image. Let's check out this first photo. I've got a great example of how I did that to create kind of a cool photo with neon reflections. So in this picture, you can see me and Jordan were outside of a store that had a lot of neon light on the windows. This was taken at nighttime, so it was easy to kind of get that natural darkness in the background, but I wanted something on this left side of the image so that it wasn't just dark and kind of fell off into blackness. So I used my phone, and I didn't do that good of a job in this one. You can see the outline and see where my phone is, but if you do it right, it's almost not noticeable that there's a phone there, and it creates a really cool environment where it looks as if the model's just kind of floating in this neon space. So this next photo is a great example of why I ask people to bring in glasses when I know there's going to be light. This was a photo shoot I did at Dave & Buster's with my buddy Tony. I had him look directly at one of the games while wearing some of the glasses. I just think it's a really cool effect when you have the model looking towards something off camera and you can see in the reflection what it is that they're looking at. It allows you as a viewer to see what he's looking at and ultimately makes the photo make sense. But there's a lot of other reflections going on in this photo. He's got rings and he's got a nice shiny watch, so being able to get all of the reflections and really make those items of the photo pop, I was a fan of. But the glasses is the main thing we're looking at here. It's a cool way. You can do this with neon, you can do this with really any sort of artificial light, as long as the surface of whatever you want to be reflecting is reflective. It's kind of a given, but why leave it out? So this final photo, again, was at Dave & Buster's. The quality looks pretty bad. Let me flip it over here. Another shot at Dave & Buster's where, again, we used the glasses to create a reflecting effect in the photo. But where the red does reflect on his sunglasses kind of gives it the appearance that his eyes are like redded out. So it was a really cool photo. I know Tony and I both really liked that. So those are the examples I have of how I use those 3 tips to make my photos more interesting. If you follow me on Instagram or if you've ever seen my work, you'll notice I do these tricks a lot. And personally, I like doing them because it's eye-catching, it's interesting, and it just really brings a unique perspective to an otherwise boring photo. So go grab your camera or go grab your phone, whatever you use to take photos, and go test some of these out for yourself. I think you'll see it's an easy way to make your photos just that much more interesting, and a lot of people will be drawn to your photos. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. It really helps the channel out. If you have any questions about anything you saw in this video or specifically how to get a shot, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'd be happy to reply, or reach out to me on socials. I'm very active there and will answer that question for you. That's all I got for today. See you next time. Peace.